Alright guys, welcome back to the garage. Now Thursday, January the 6th, 2022, and we're sort of picking up where we left off yesterday. First thing I wanted to address is I did actually get my new switches in, and I've been out here sort of playing around with them. So these are an Amazon purchase. They were only $20 actually for the two switches, so not too big an investment. I have tried them. They actually fit in the actual stock harness locations. They're actually the same size relatively as the old stock original switches. They are definitely more plasticky. The original switches have a metal surround. These are just a plastic surround, and they're not quite nicely as embossed as the original switches, although my originals are losing a little bit of paint. Anyway, I've plugged these into the harness, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, they don't work. They sort of tried to activate the motors a little bit. Maybe there's not, maybe they don't pass enough amperage or current through. I'm not sure. But anyway, we're going to stick with the original switches. As a couple of you have commented on my video from yesterday, it's probably better to stick with the original switches anyway. So that's what we're going to do. They're operating just fine. So these will either go back to Amazon, or they may go to another project somewhere down the line. Sometimes it's just more of a hassle to send them back than it is just to keep them. So we'll throw those over there in the pile. Anyway, as mentioned yesterday as well, we're going to start working on pulling the steering wheel. So I've got my steering wheel puller here. I'm not exactly sure if I have the correct hardware here to pull the wheel. I think you need an M6 bolt, but I believe these are going to be a little bit too short, but we'll have to wait and see. Here's the new unit for the 3-position switch that we're going to install. As mentioned yesterday, my turn signal switch has broken off, so I decided to go with a completely new unit. The turn signal, I believe, had been tried to fix a number of times previously. Otherwise, I might have given it a go. I actually did have a look at it and did try to epoxy it back together, but in my mind, it's just better to go to a new switch. So hopefully, this is going to be plug and play. It is look a little bit daunting as far as the wiring is concerned, although they are plug-ins. Hopefully this will, like I said, just plug and play. This is from Vic Autosports, so it's not exactly cheap. I did get this on sale. It was $250 US, plus obviously the shipping, so probably closer to, I don't know, $275 US with the shipping, and that's probably about $350 Canadian if I do the conversion. So it's not exactly a cheap part. But like I said, it was on sale. I think the original prices of these was somewhere around $350 US, so it was getting up there. Anyway, hopefully that works. I don't mind paying the price as long as everything works as it should. So we'll endeavor to see if that does in the next few minutes. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pop that steering wheel off and see if I need to make a hardware run. If not, if we can get the wheel off successfully, then we can move on to getting the cowling around the wheel off. Not exactly sure how this is going to work, but we'll figure it out. I'm sure there's probably a couple of fasteners on the bottom side that'll allow me to peel that console off to be able to get to the switches. So let's give it a shot and see how we do. First struggle we're going to have is getting this little plastic cover off. I think there's 3 little sort of places where it grips on there, so hopefully we won't damage anything. It's always the fear with these old cars being, 40 years old, that things are getting a little bit more brittle. Maybe they haven't been off the car before. It's possible this has never been off the car before, and if that's the case, it can be a little bit more stuck. My understanding with these wheels as well is that they can be stuck on there pretty well. Sometimes they can be fairly easy, sometimes a bit more difficult to get off. The Triumph wheels are generally very easy to get off. You just give them a couple quick sharp blows at the back of the wheel, either with your fists or with your knees, while you keep the centered nut on, and generally the wheels will come off on the TRs. But apparently it's not the case with the Alphas. You kind of need a puller. So we'll find out shortly. All right, I'm not going to lie, that was a little bit scary getting that cap off. It's sort of like a hard plastic. There's not a lot of give to it. Anyway, you can see the 3 mounting tabs there that correspond here with the tab locations in the hub itself. So it's just a matter of sort of pushing back on those and getting them out. What I'd used was my glazing stick here from Moss in order to sort of get under there and sort of press those tabs. So anyway, it popped out no problem. So next step is to remove this plug here, which goes to, I think they call it the stator tube. There's a stator tube on my TR3. I think the wiring goes through the stator tube, very similar to my TR3. So this plug comes out. I believe there's a, this is probably for the horn, and there's probably another contact that we need to disconnect inside of this rubber plug. We do have those screws here, and I've just tried to fit them into the puller locations, and they fit perfectly. So these are M6, I think I said. So I think those are going to work fine. We're just going to have to get some large washers for them. Anyway, we'll get to that point where we use the puller, and I'll show you the setup for that as we move along. All right, so there's that wire that runs through the stator tube for the horn. And I should mention that the battery is disconnected at this point. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go after the nut here. I'm not sure what size it is, but looks like it has a locking tab on it as well here at the back. So we'll see how we're going to address that. But obviously this is going to be metric. So we're not going to wind this all the way off. We're going to use that as kind of a bearing surface, I think, for the puller. Anyway, like I said, we'll get to the setup eventually, but let me find out what size socket this is so we can get this off, or partially off. Alright guys, I was lucky to have a 27mm socket. That is the size of the nut on there. You need to bend the locking tab down before you can get that nut off. It was on there quite well. So anyway, I'm going to remove the nut, take the locking tab off, and put the nut back on. Anyway, we'll try to get it off without a puller, with a full, with a couple of sharp taps on the rear of the wheel, and see if that'll actually come off without the puller. But I'm pretty sure it's going to need the puller to get this off. So no harm in trying, though. Let's give it a shot. So here's the little locking tab, and it's got a little locating peg on the bottom that fits here. So that really works to keep the wheel from coming off. So again, we're going to give it a couple of sharp pulls. And a couple of stiff blows on the back of the wheel to see if they'll come off, but I'm suspecting that it won't. These are also keyed. You can see the keyway there, so it'll have to come straight off of the, I guess I'm not sure whether it's spline or just keyed, but anyway, the keyway is there, or the key is there. I never get that right. I can't remember whether it's a key called a keyway or a key, or somebody corrected me once and now I don't know what to say. Anyway, it's there. Alright, here's the puller arrangement, and we do have a little washer to act as a bearing block down here. We've got our 6mm bolts screwed all the way down into their slots here. A couple of large washers to keep this from pulling through, and we're just going to start cranking down on the center here, and hopefully this will pull that wheel off the spline. It is definitely being stubborn. It's really on there. I haven't even budged it yet, and I've got quite a bit of pressure on, so what I've been doing is just been tapping the center a little bit, see if I can shock it a little bit as well to get it to move, and it doesn't seem to want to be moving at all. I've upgraded from stubby wrench. I was using the stubby originally, but I couldn't get enough leverage on the stubby, so I've upgraded to a longer wrench, and I'll keep trying. I'm worried about obviously pulling out the threaded bolts that are in the hub if I put too much torque on this, but it has not moved as of yet. Well, no success so far on the puller. Like I said, I've had quite a bit of pressure on it, and I'm fearing that I'm going to be pulling these bolts out of the hub shortly. So I think what we'll do now is we'll get a little bit of penetrating oil on this and let the penetrating oil work, and then we'll come back and we'll try to utilize the puller again. In the meantime, I'm going to try to see if I can get the housing off without getting the wheel off. And I think I need a little screwdriver here for the rheostat to be able to get that off. That's over here on the side of the wheel. There's a little dial over here. You can see that. So it looks like I need a little small screwdriver to get the set screwdriver out of there to pull that off, to be able to pull the cladding off. But let's figure that out and see if we can get to the switch without pulling the wheel off. I think the wheel has to come off eventually anyway for me to be able to slide that switch over the column. So I'm thinking if I can get the cladding off, I may be able to get a little bit heavier duty puller on there. I've got a 2-jaw puller and a 3-jaw puller that I may be able to hook behind the steering wheel to get a little bit more leverage on this than this dinky little steering wheel puller. I'm quite surprised that it's not working though. Hasn't budged even a centimeter, so I don't know. Penetrating oil, I guess, will be the next step. Alright, we've got the upper and lower cladding removed from the steering column, and it wasn't very difficult. There's only 4 Phillips screws. that hold those two pieces around the column. And there's what it looks like without the cladding. So there's the switch that I'm trying to get at. So we've let this sit for a little bit with the penetrating oil. We're going to try to put the puller on it again. We did bring out my 3-jawed puller, and we may have to resort to using this bad boy as the little 2-jaw, or the little single center puller doesn't seem to be working. So I'm just a little bit concerned about breaking this wheel, but it's got to come off. So anyway, we'll give it another shot, and we'll try to be careful about it, and we'll see how we do. All right, quick shot of the 3-jaw puller setup, and still not budging. This steering wheel is like it's welded on there. Oh, don't want to break anything, but I really need to get this wheel off. It's going to be an expensive fix if I do break it, and it's going to mean I'm going to need a whole new wheel. Don't want to really go there, but don't see any other alternative in order to change the switch out. So we'll keep working at it and going cautiously until we don't. Well, I'm kind of at a loss as to what to do here. I can't add any heat because I've got wiring going through the center of the stator tube and obviously here, so I don't want to melt the wiring that's there. I'm not sure if I want to crank. I've already cranked this pretty much as hard as I can with just a regular gear wrench. And I'm thinking of going to a socket to put more pressure on there, but then again, I don't want to also fracture the hub here or chip the rear of the hub off. I'm not sure how much pressure that's going to be able to take. So yeah, I'm kind of just sitting here. I already sprayed it with the penetrating oil. Obviously that's not helped, although I could spray it over a number of days, but I doubt that will help either. So yeah, we'll just sit here and stare at it. We'll will it off. Well, it's been a couple hours out here. Still haven't broken anything, but probably getting pretty close. Got a big ratchet on it now, and it still won't budge. So I've never had a steering wheel this stuck. So I'm sure I'm not missing anything as far as fasteners are concerned. I was thinking that these little ones up here would be holding something, but they're dome headed. There's no way to remove those. So unless I was to grind those out, I believe the only thing they're holding in is possibly the horn piece at the back. I'm not sure. I actually tried a little bit of heat on here as well, not a lot, just to see if it would budge, but still nothing. Been trying to shock it with a hammer. So yeah, not good. I also tried to modify my puller to pick up these locations here and try to pull from these 3 tab locations, but unfortunately that won't work. Even if I grind the heads of the puller down a little bit, it's still not going to fit, so that won't work. I'm thinking about tapping these holes a little bit larger for the standard puller location and going with some beefier bolts and seeing if I can go back to the other style of puller. But if this puller is not working, I don't think the other one's going to work either. So I'm really at a loss here as to what to do. So I think we're just going to walk away for now. Otherwise something really is going to get damaged. So we'll walk away, do a bit more research, gain a little bit more patience, and we'll try to get out here another time, another day possibly. I'm going to leave the tension on this. Who knows, maybe it'll pop with the tension on, but that's as hard as I can actually crank on that ratchet, and it's still not budging. Alright, that's it for now. Frustrated. Alright, good morning guys. It's another day after walking away yesterday trying to get this steering wheel off. We left it under tension overnight, but it didn't budge, so we're on to the next step of the process, and that was to upsize the puller bolts. We're going to go back to the center puller solution. Hopefully it's going to be a solution. And we've upgraded from the M6, I think these were, up to 5/8 inch coarse thread bolts. So we've retapped the holes here, and we've got some beefier pulling bolts because these were just going to break or pull out. These still may pull out, but at least they've got a better chance with the beefier bolts. So I guess we'll go through the process again and try to see if we can get this thing off today. We did spray it with penetrating fluid, let it sit overnight. I'm not sure whether that's going to help or not. So let's try this, and we'll come back hopefully with a success story. Well, I'm not sure that I've encountered anything so stuck in its life. Maybe some hubs from a TR6, but this thing is under incredible force. I can't really even crank this large ratchet. I'm going to have to get a breaker bar if I want to go any further on this. And I may have to do that. Again, I'm worried about breaking the wheel, but there's no way I can do this otherwise. I've made sure that all the fasteners are disconnected. I've even gone so far as playing around with the steering wheel lock to make sure that's not an issue. I think on some of the later Alphas, the steering wheel lock has to be off in order for the wheel to come off, but that's not the case on the earlier cars. So I guess we'll just keep playing around. I do have one more trick. Possibly I'm going to use an air hammer with a blunt chisel on probably just this little bearing surface here and sort of buzz this and see if that'll cause some vibrations to maybe get this to come off while it's under tension. But I have been hammering again on the bolt here at the end just with my brass hammer. Just to see if some of those vibrations might cause it to pop, but that hasn't been the case either. So anyway, we'll continue on, losing hope. One thing's for sure, when this does come off, and I said when this comes off, and I don't like to swear on this channel generally, but I know that this is going to scare the shit out of me when it does come off. I'm sure it's going to pop. I do have the large nut still on the wheel, so it can't go too far, but I think when this comes off, it's going to be quite a large popping sound and a little bit of destruction going on. All right, who's your daddy? Success. We got her off in less than dramatic fashion. I was actually getting out of the car to go get a bigger breaker bar, and I heard a little ping, and that was it. So, and then it loosened up and came off. So yeah, it gave up a fight, but in the end it went out with a little bit of a whimper. Anyway, we can now get to this mechanism that we need to exchange out, so we can finally move on after, that's got to be 4 hours trying to get this wheel off, so good thing I'm not getting paid by the hour. Alright, time for a bit of a break, I think, and a bit of a cleanup. You can believe I used all those tools to get that steering wheel off. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, going to do a little bit of cleanup. We're going to vacuum up some of the aluminum shavings here from the carpet. We're going to clean up our tools. We're going to clean up our bench. I've asked Alin to come by. I mentioned to him previously that when I got the steering wheel off, that I'd like to come by for him to have a look at the switch and do some comparisons of the new switch versus the old. Plus, he's a little bit more flexible to get up under the dash and get to the wiring. So he's agreed to come for a beer. Shouldn't take too long, hopefully, to swap the switches out. So he should be here within the next hour or so. So we'll put that to good use and do some cleaning before he gets here, so the place is a little bit more organized, and we can actually open the fridge where the beer is. So everybody will be happy. There, we got the master here comparing the new switch versus the old switch, and I could already see some differences, but upon some further investigation, it even looks like it has a provision here under this white cap for a horn, which we don't require because we've got the horn going through the stator tube, and has this little collar that's spring loaded that touches the back of the wheel. There's actually a little pin there that needs to go up. Yeah. Anyway, so there are some differences with the new switch. We're hoping that the wiring is the same, but obviously we don't need the hookup for the horn because I don't know, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, because this tube actually, when it goes all the way in,
yeah.
Now I can't put it back in because I need to push this.
Yeah.
But this tube acts as a plunger.
Yeah, it's spring loaded. So actually I couldn't even see where the key came out because this actually comes up on a spring and covers the keyway in the shaft. So anyway, we'll figure it out. There it is there actually. There's the keyway. So that's covered by that tube when it comes up on the spring. Anyway, we're going to take it apart and see what we can do to get it back together. I'm good at taking stuff apart, so I could probably take it apart, but I wanted him to be here when I took it apart so he could see what I was doing.
They don't have locks on them, they're just press fit.
So he didn't know he was coming here to practice his yoga skills.
Yeah.
All right, we've dropped the main fuse panel to be able to get to the wiring behind it, and we've disconnected the other cable with the pin connectors, so that's there.
And also the ignition switch.
And the ignition switch is disconnected. Why did we disconnect the ignition switch? Do we need to? Probably didn't need to, did we?
Not really.
Anyway, it's disconnected, just for fun. So yeah, so that's what that looks like, and the wiring looks pretty good, pretty tidy under there.
Yeah.
So the fuse box looks pretty good. Anyway, we'll continue on. All right, Alin's got the new switch hooked up, and everything seems to be working with the exception of the flasher unit, which I knew was an issue before. So we confirmed that it's bad, but everything seems to work. Wiper switch, washer, motor, signals, lights, everything works off, which that he's got connected at the moment. So now we're going to attempt to remove the old unit and replace it with the new unit. So let's see how that goes. All right, we're just looking at the turn signal canceling mechanism. And let me grab the old switch here, and maybe Alin can show us how the old switch works. So it's got this little wheel here on the inside that would have traveled on the steering column or the steering shaft. And as the wheel turned, it would hit the wheel and it would cancel it. Now, it's a totally different, you can probably see the action there. So that would just ride on the column.
Yeah.
Now on the new one, it's got a totally different action, and it's got this pin here, which we think we're going to need to drill a recess in the rear of the wheel in order for it to follow, obviously, the wheel motion and to cancel the turn signal. So
Because, yeah, look, when you have the left signal, when you turn this to the left,
And then
it
it cancels
just
it.
skips. But
Right.
if you turn to the right, it cancels it. And the
Yeah.
same way, the other way around. You turn to the right, it cancels. It just skips. But turn to the left, it cancels it.
right.
So this needs to be attached to the steering wheel.
Right. The other thing we don't need is the horn brush here, because the horn we've got going through the center of the column through the stator tube, and this is redundant, but we're just going to let this ride against the back of the steering wheel. It's not going to be hooked up as it's not required, but I guess maybe for later cars where they use this, maybe that was the way they had the horn provision built in for a later Alfa Romeo. All right, so everything, like I said, is hooked up. We've got this actually attached now to the column itself with the two screws. So now we've got to figure out how to do the hookup for the turn signal cancellation on the rear of the wheel. We're also going to tuck the wiring back up. We are going to leave the wiring for the flasher unit just hanging. Obviously, I need to order one of those. Now we've determined that it's bad. I'll have to find a new one, and that's not something I'm going to be able to find at my local parts store, I'm sure. All right, we'll button this wiring up best as we can, and then we'll move on to refitting the wheel. So we have to do a little customization here in order to get the little ring that fits over the column, which is got spring pressure to it. The other switch had a little retainer for the collar, and since we don't have that on this, we've actually drilled a hole through the column, a small one, and just inserted a pick in there to keep the spring pressure on the tube, so we can slide the wheel on, because the keyway is actually hidden by this tube when you release the spring pressure. So it's a complicated thing. Hope you
relate it.
we're gonna let it go. Okay, so there's the tube that comes out.
And it's spring loaded.
Right.
But on this side, it hides the keyway.
Right. Oh, by the way, there's the hole we drilled on the back of the steering wheel in order to fit that pin for the turn signal cancellation. So we're having to get creative here. Anyway, the idea is to keep that under spring pressure with the with this in here. Oh, hang on. I don't know if I can do this one-handed or not.
You should be able to.
Okay, there it is.
So
Maybe just spin the black thing a little bit, because it's right on the, there you go. Yeah. So that's the idea, and so we're going to try to put the wheel on with the key and then pull this out and release that spring pressure. So that's the idea. Anyway, I'm going to put the camera down now and do this. So, all right, so new switch is in and everything seems to be working as it should. Want to demonstrate? Okay, horns work. Keys.
hold on, lights would work. And this is the running lights. And
Yeah, so headlights basically, and then high beams, and then flash to pass is pulled toward you. Yeah. Okay, and then signal lights, we know that the flasher unit is not good, but we've got left hand, we've got right hand, okay, and then wipers, ignition for the wipers. So wipers work. Is there 2 speeds on the wipers? Is there 2 speeds on the wiper?
I think even 3.
Oh, might be intermittent wipers actually. Okay, and then the washer bottle. Perfect. So everything works as it should.
And it even cancels the signal.
And it cancels, yeah. So
No,
do it. Cancel. Cancel. So everything is good as far as that. So a little bit of customization in order to get that switch to work. You know, having to drill the pilot for the cancellation. Some of the wiring colors were a little bit different than they should have been.
Totally different.
That sleeve retainer wasn't on this new one as well, so you had to overcome that by drilling that small pilot hole. So yeah, I think I'm glad Alain was here so we were able to sort of talk through that and figure out what to do. And obviously he's great underneath the dash as far as the wiring is concerned. The fuse box are back together. Again, the only thing we need to do is we need to get a new flasher unit, and that should take care of that. So that's another thing we can pretty much cross off the list. We'll order that flasher and hopefully that'll come within fairly short order. All right, that's it for now. We've got one more little project we're going to look at, and then I'm going to let them go for the rest of the afternoon. All right, just coming up to 7 p.m. and we're just out to shut the garage down for the night. So once again, big thank you to Alain for stopping by and helping to get the new switchgear installed. Certainly was a much better day than it was yesterday after I spent numerous hours fighting with that steering wheel to get it off. Anyway, we'll work on some small jobs tomorrow. We'll refit the switches and the ashtray and the console. We'll play around with the glove box door. So maybe some minor projects tomorrow, and then we'll move on from there. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for commenting, and as always, thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you back out here on the project tomorrow. Have a good night.